But once we have it labeled, we feel like then that is the issue. Okay, if I get diagnosed with a herniated disc, then the herniated disc is my issue. If I get diagnosed with plantar fasciitis is the issue. So as soon as we get a label, we think that that is the issue. But sometimes, and quite often, it's not the only issue, and oftentimes it is not the cause of the issue.
Welcome to the Exercise is Health podcast, where we're talking about exercise, health, and the interconnectedness of the two. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we will be coming to you every single week from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Exercise is Health podcast. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we are coming to you from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg in Schaumburg, Illinois. Now, at Muscle Activation Schaumburg, we believe your health is your most valuable asset. Your health is one of the biggest influencers of the quality and quantity of time that you have. And while there are many aspects of health, our expertise is exercise. Exercise has been proven time and again to not only improve your health, but also increase your longevity and improve your quality of life. And if you're looking for a way to increase your longevity and improve your quality of life, then you need to check out an event that we are going to be holding on April 4th, 2020. Julie, tell them more about this event.
So on April 4th, 2020, we're going to be hosting the 2020 Schaumburg Health Summit. So this is actually the second year that we've done it. So it's going to be like a TED Talks event where we're having different professionals talking in depth about something cool that's happening in their field, something interesting, or just an educational piece. And it will be all health professionals from the area, and you'll be learning from nutrition experts, health experts, different medical providers, personal trainers. So make sure you check it out, because we're going to try to have a professional from all the different fields of health so that you are gathering more information for you to take home and change your health through all the different, I guess we could say, categories of health. So definitely check it out. Go to SchaumburgHealthSummit.com. Tickets are on sale now. You can get them on the website. Also, if you are listening and you are a health company, we are open. We do have our sponsorship spots open. So definitely check it out on the sponsor page, but we would love to see you there.
Now, today we are talking about an issue that honestly a ton of people have, but we want to provide a different viewpoint on it. And it is disc issues. Now, you might be listening to this thinking, oh yeah, I've been told I have disc issues. I definitely feel as if I have disc issues. I know a bunch of people that I have disc issues, and we run into that all the time as well. People that say, hey, you know what? I have a disc issue in my low back. I have a disc issue in my neck. And we want to talk with you about it today because in our viewpoint, discs are not the entire story, and we need to explain to you why. Okay? So here's the thing. Let's first acknowledge the prevalence of disc issues. All right? It's been said that 80% of people over the age of 30 have some kind of structural issue going on with their discs. 80% of people over the age of 30. That is a huge population of people that have something structurally going on with their discs. However, and this is a part that often gets left out, however, half the people that have structural issues going on with their discs are showing no symptoms of disc issues whatsoever, which to me, when I hear that, tells me, okay, if there's a large population of people that has a disc issue, but only half the people are showing issues that would be related to the disc issue, then maybe the signs and symptoms that we normally associate as being disc issues may not actually be completely caused by the discs themselves, but there might be something else going on with the story there. Does that make sense? Because if the discs were the only piece of the story, then we would assume that 100% of people that have structural issues going on with their discs would be showing signs and symptoms. But half the people don't. Half the people have no symptoms whatsoever, which should throw up a flag in your head of like, well, then maybe the discs themselves are not the entire story. And actually, there's a really large piece of the story. And that is something that we specialize in here. And that's what we're going to dive into today.
You know, it's so interesting. And I think about this a lot. And there's never going to be a way around it. But When people get diagnosed with stuff, like I've got a herniated disc, that's like a diagnosable, I've got a name to my issue. Or, things we've talked about in the past, arthritis or fasciitis or tendinitis, all these things that are like a label. It's interesting because once we have something that's labeled, and I'm saying this not because I think you shouldn't get things labeled or that you should. I'm indifferent. I don't care. But once we have it labeled, we feel like then that is the issue. Like, okay, if I get diagnosed with a herniated disc, then the herniated disc is my issue. If I get diagnosed with plantar fasciitis is the issue. Do you see where I'm going with this? So as soon as we get a label, we think that that is the issue. But sometimes, and quite often, it's not the only issue, and oftentimes it is not the cause of the issue. And so the issue with this issue is that once we get a name or a label to our issue, that we start trying to address that name or that label. Like, I have a herniated disc, so I'm going to try to address the herniated disc. I have plantar fasciitis, I'm going to try to address my plantar fasciitis. The problem with doing this is that you're trying to solve the symptom. We're trying to resolve the symptom. But really the way that we should be resolving the symptom is we kind of have to step back and look at the entire picture of maybe how this thing came to be. And so often I wonder, like, if people were doing the things to keep their body as healthy as possible and they have plantar fasciitis, but they don't have the symptom, would they still call themselves someone that has plantar fasciitis? Same thing goes with discs, since that's what we're talking about today. If you kept your body in a certain condition that you never felt the symptoms of your herniated disc, would you still call yourself someone that has a herniated disc? Yes, you technically still have one, but would you operate in a different way? Like, would you be doing things differently? So I've always thought about that, because I think that just from my experience, and if I didn't work in this field, I probably would not think this way. But just from my experience, like, I have a fasciitis issue, and I no longer call myself like, oh, I have plantar fasciitis, because it doesn't affect me at all. I don't have the issue. I'm certain I've been diagnosed with it many, many times for 8 years, many times through those 8 years. And I wouldn't say that I have plantar fasciitis, even though I still one time had the symptom. So I wonder if we started changing how we worked with things, and today we're going to be talking about discs, if one day people with herniated discs could operate just normally, because their symptom doesn't, or their diagnosis maybe doesn't matter to them anymore. And like you said, so many of us have herniated discs, changes in our discs, degeneration in our discs, and have no symptoms. So we keep going about life in our normal way, which is kind of our goal here at MAS, is like, hey, whatever you have going on, can we make you as strong as possible? Can we influence your body as much as possible so that you can keep doing the stuff you want? Because I think that's the main thing with life, do the stuff you want.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And I completely agree. And it's such a great point that you bring up. And I think what makes it so tough when talking with people about this is if you have a disc-related symptom, you go and you get this imaging done. And now all of a sudden you have objective proof of a reason for why your subjective symptom is there. You have an objective printout. Like, you can structurally see, or you can see that there is, without question, a change in the structure. And so then there's like no question in your mind that, well, I have this printout. This printout says that I have herniated discs because it showed up on imaging. So this must be the reason why. But there are so many other things that don't necessarily even have the opportunity to show up on imaging that can impact how those discs operate and can impact how supported those discs are. And that's oftentimes one of the biggest things that's missed is, yes, you have this printout that says you have the herniated discs, and we know you have symptoms that relate to a herniated disc, but there are other things that aren't going to show up on imaging, that aren't going to be shown on the printout, that can influence a herniated disc, and we can address those other things. Then the things that you are, from a symptom standpoint, that you're associating with a herniated disc may no longer be an issue. And really, the thing that we're kind of like tiptoeing around, that we're hinting towards, the thing that's not going to show up on imaging is the muscular system, and how well the muscular system can contract and how efficiently the muscular system can work. And when the muscular system gets working better, the discs can be better supported, the discs can be healthier, and a lot of times the things that you might be associating with disc-like symptoms may start to dissipate or go away altogether. But before we get into that, let's talk about discs themselves a little bit so we can kind of build this argument and then kind of bring it full circle for you so you can understand the role that the muscles play and why your muscles are actually playing a much bigger role in what you may be experiencing as disc issues. Okay, so for discs themselves, first of all, a kind of fun fact about discs is oftentimes they will make up between a fifth to a third of the entire length of your spine. Okay, so they have definitely some height to them. They're super important to allow the spine to move as it's designed to move and to move as much as it's designed to move. And that's really important for the health of the spine as well. So having structurally intact and healthy discs is really, really important to make sure that the structure, the overall structure of the spine stays healthy. Now, one thing about discs is it has essentially what I'm going to call like two component parts, all right? The two component parts are the kind of innermost part of the disc, which is called the nucleus pulposus, all right? And this oftentimes has the consistency of about toothpaste, all right? Sometimes when you hear about discs and you hear about the nucleus, we talk about, it's like the jelly in the middle of a donut, but it's actually a little bit more dense than that, okay? It's more of a consistency of toothpaste. So you know how jelly just kind of slips and slides everywhere, and the nucleus pulposus, again, it's a little bit more dense than that, and it takes a little bit of force to kind of get it moving. And then you also have the rings of the discs, okay? And those are called the annulus fibrosus. This is the kind of outermost layers of the disc. In fact, there's 7 layers to this annulus fibrosus, all right? So there are multiple layers of this annulus fibrosus. And the cool thing about these layers is they are crisscrossed in every direction that you can imagine. They're going straight up, they're going straight horizontal, they're going at all varying degrees of diagonal. And the neat thing about that is the different kind of angles that the annulus fibrosus, the fibers of it are running at or are positioned. That will allow those layers to tolerate stress and to tolerate force in all different kinds of directions. So structurally, if you look at the makeup of a disc, it looks pretty similar to what would be like analogous to, say, like a steel belted tire. Okay, if you look at how a steel belted tire is made up with these kind of crisscrossed steel wires within the tire itself, that's kind of how your discs are made up. These kind of crisscrossed fibers as they go from one layer to the next. And these fibers, they're not these like flimsy little fibers, they're made up of ligaments. And the cool thing about ligaments is they're pretty dense and they don't stretch, okay? So they're going to be taut, they are going to be, they're not going to be super malleable. But so structurally, it's going to allow for a lot of support and a lot of protection of these discs. Well, if we're sitting there, we're thinking about this, it's like, okay, we have these discs that have, these multiple layers, this nucleus pulposus on the inside that, takes some force to kind of move out. And, structurally, the discs are built pretty sound. Well, why in the world are people's discs continuing to get beat up? Why is it such a prevalent issue? Well, here's the thing. The muscles that support the abdominal cavity, the muscles that support your trunk, the muscles that support your spine, when they are working well, up to 30% of the pressure in the disc of L5-S1, which is a common area for people that have disc issues, up to 30% of that pressure can be relieved. And up to 50% of the pressure in the disc area of T12-L1, so a little bit higher on the spine, up to 50% of that pressure can be relieved when the muscles are working well. The flip side is also true. When the muscles are not supporting those areas, then that means more pressure going through the disc. That means more stress going through the disc. And acutely, it may not be super noticeable, but over time, it can become a really big issue If your muscles are chronically not supporting your structure, not supporting those discs, and so the discs are constantly getting beat up and beat up and beat up, and all of a sudden, all those layers of ligaments that make up the outside of the discs, they're getting, pulled on and pulled on and pulled on and pulled on, and then they start to get a little tears in them, and then all of a sudden, that nucleus pulposus starts to creep from one layer to the next, and then starts to migrate out. When people have disc issues, it's rarely something that happens over the course of, a week, or unless there's like one specific super traumatic accident. It's usually something that takes years and years and decades of kind of building up because the muscular system is not working efficiently, because the muscular system is not supporting the discs as they need to be supported. And so over time, those discs just continue to get beat up.
Now we're talking to you in detail about this because I think that we commonly think, okay, so, if I have a disc issue, exercise will help, but I don't know, maybe it will, maybe it won't. But we're very serious. Exercise and working on the muscle system really can help this area. And before we started this podcast, I was like, Charlie, I'm going to make a list of all the muscles that directly connect to the lumbar spine, since that's normally where people get disc issues. And I came up quickly with a list of 14 muscles. And that is 14 muscles that I've never heard anyone ever talk about when it comes to disc issues. And just to enlighten you, the ones I made were multifidus, longissimus, iliocostalis, rotator, spinalis, intertransversary, interspinalis, quadratus lumborum, latissimus dorsi, psoas major, psoas minor, lower TVA, internal obliques, and external obliques. That is a ton of muscles that are never talked about, especially when you're diagnosed with a disc issue. It's almost like when you get diagnosed with a disc issue, the next step should be like, hey, let's check in with the muscles. How are they doing? Because these are the things that are supposed to be supporting the area. And just like Charlie said, taking and manipulating the pressure that's in that area. And so it's crazy that these things are never really looked at. So not only do we have these 14 muscles that, and I'm sure there's more that I'm missing. Maybe we'll see. I think I got them all.
Well, the ones that attach like directly to
right.
the lumbar spine. There are a lot more that influence that area, but you're talking ones that like have a direct attachment either to the vertebra itself or through the thoracolumbar fascia.
Right. So 14 with a direct connection. But then, as we've talked in many podcasts before, everything in your body is connected. So we see a lot of times muscles of the hips influencing the lower back. So that's another handful of muscles of the knees and of the feet, muscles of the thoracic spine. So we have muscles everywhere that are I guess not directly connected or connecting into the lumbar spine, but we've got 14 that are already directly connected, and those are never really normal part of normal treatment or normal addressing of this issue. Now, as we continue to talk about this, we want to keep painting this picture of how does the muscle system influence this area. And one of the best ways that we've found to talk to our clients about this is using analogies. And one of the analogies that we like to talk to our clients about is we call it our guardrail analogy. And this guardrail analogy is talking about a car going down a mountain. And I don't know about you, but I hate driving in the mountains. Like, I would prefer to never drive in the mountains because you know what it is like. You're on this road. It's not, doesn't seem like that safe to be super up high. And as you're swirling around, switchbacking down the side of a mountain, I feel like I'm always on the side that's about to fall off. And I'm like, okay, please don't hit any rocks, no ice. We need to stay on the road. That being said, so normally I let Charlie, take the lead on driving in the mountains because I have to work on breathing. So anyways, let's say Charlie was going to say, let's just actually not steer ourselves down the mountain. I'm just going to let the steering do itself. So as you're thinking, you're like, okay, that's nuts. Why would anyone ever do that? But just think of this crazy picture, like pretend we're in a cartoon. So Charlie's not steering, we're going down a mountain, and the first thing our car is going to do is hit those metal guardrails, right? And it's probably going to steer us over, and then we're going to skid along the guardrail, and then we're skid around the mountain and skid around the guardrail. Like imagine we're switchbacking, right? So the car is getting completely beat up. The guardrails are looking a little rough. But, sometime I would assume maybe, we would get down the mountain somehow. But that's like the silly way to do it, right? The smart way would be, all right, Charlie, stay awake, hold on to the steering wheel, steer us down so the car looks beautiful at the end, Julie's not hyperventilating, and the guardrails look pretty good, right? That would be the nice way to go down the mountain. So the difference between those two is that when Charlie's holding on to that steering wheel, he's actively controlling the car. When he's not holding on to the steering wheel, the car is still being controlled, but passively, right? Like it's being guided in some way down the mountain somehow, but it's not like this precise active role like how it is when Charlie's holding on to the steering wheel. The muscles of your body, and we're talking about the spine in this case, of your spine are like the active control. When they are working properly, your joints, your ligaments, any area of your body that's moving, the areas in your disc area are being actively controlled. And when we start to lose that active control, stuff starts getting beat up and stressed out. Right? Like remember the car was getting beat up and the guardrails were getting beat up and Julie was getting stressed out. I was getting stressed out as we go down. Stuff starts getting beat up and stressed out that shouldn't have to tolerate so much beating up and stressing out. Things like the discs in particular, which is what we're talking about today. So when we're losing active control from the muscles, because the muscles are the things that are supposed to be actively controlling areas, they're supposed to be precise and guiding things. When they start losing their ability to do their job as muscles, things like the discs specifically will start to get stressed out. They'll start to have to tolerate stressors and forces that they're not supposed to have to tolerate. I mean, I'm glad they're there as backup, just like I'm glad that there's guardrails as backup, but they're not designed to tolerate all those stressors. And I think that is also a misconception about discs. Like when we learn about discs, wherever we learn about discs, we learn about them as like these spongy, jelly-filled things, right? And so when I think of that, I think of like Tigger's tail. Like, oh, okay, so like, when I'm walking, it's just like boing, 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 boing. Like that's what I think of them as, but they're not supposed to be smushed like that all throughout the day. It's not like Tigger's tail, actually. They're good backup, but they're not designed to be like a squishy, like pogo stick.
No, you're absolutely right, Julie. And so, the question becomes, okay, if the muscles are playing a really big role in, the overall health of the disc and making sure that the discs stay protected and that the discs stay healthy, well then what can be done to make sure that the muscles stay working well in order to make sure that the discs stay healthy, discs stay protected, or if the discs are already compromised, to make sure that it doesn't get worse and possibly provide some relief for the discs, okay? And so for us here at Muscle Activation Schaumburg, hands down, like the number one thing that we think about when it comes to disc issues and the muscular system, we're looking at muscle activation techniques, okay? Helping to find where people's muscles are not working as well as they should and get those muscles working better. Because when muscles are working better, now you have the opportunity to do exercise. Now you have the opportunity to have your joints better supported. Now you have the opportunity to move as you're supposed to be able to move. But step number one, in our eyes at least, is getting the muscles working better with muscle activation techniques. Now, this can be meaning we need to get the muscles of the trunk working better. Like Julie said, it may mean that we need to get muscles of the hips working better. Because if the hips aren't moving well, the trunk may pick up extra stress. It may mean that we need to get the muscles of people's feet working better. Or talk to them about the shoes that they're wearing, because if they're wearing really stiff shoes or their feet aren't able to move well, other areas of their body are going to have to move more. It might be their hips and it might be their trunk. And so there's a very mechanical relationship between each of these different areas of your body and how it may culminate in your discs getting stressed out. But honestly, hands down, one of the things that I see most consistently, like anecdotally, is that when people's muscles get working better, the concerns that they once had about, disc issues or disc-like symptoms, they either get dissipated greatly or go away altogether. It may not be that the structure of the disc itself has changed, but the discs aren't having to pick up as much stress. They're better supported. The rest of their body's working better. And so the signs and symptoms that they were relating to discs previously may not be nearly as noticeable or there at all, because the muscles are now able to support those areas better.
Now, as we've been talking about this whole podcast. We don't want you to think that we're suggesting that this is a treatment for your disc issue, because as non-medical professionals, we're unable to provide treatments. But as muscle specialists, we're able to help you manage a lot of the issues that arise. That muscles play a huge, huge role, if not entire role, of the cause of some issues. And we actually suggest that muscle activation techniques be used as, hey, this is just part of my health plan. I do this to keep my muscle system from causing a lot of stuff. Now, most people do come in once they have a symptom, because that's one of the biggest things that scream at them, that say something's not right. And that's the way our body tells us something's not right, something's not working well. And muscle activation techniques does a beautiful job at helping the muscle system manage and deal with whatever's going on, whether that is a structural thing or whether that's not a structural thing. We get a lot of people with back issues coming in that have no structural issues, and it's simply just the muscle system. We can take care of that and make sure the muscles are working properly. But we also get, the handful of people that come in with structural issues. We get the muscle system working better, and their spine is working and operating much better, because the muscles that are supposed to move and support the spine are working way better. So we don't want you to confuse those as like, I just got diagnosed with a herniated disc, let me go get MAT for treatment. We're actually just trying to make the environment that disc is living in better, more conducive to healing. We're trying to take away the part that is stressful from the muscle system and calm that area down. So I just wanted to describe the difference with that, because that can often be a misunderstanding.
No, that's a really great point, Julie. And, just to kind of reiterate that, with MAT, we're going to be looking at not necessarily like what's causing the disc issue, but rather, all right, where your muscle's not working well. And by getting your muscles working better, oftentimes a lot of other things start to get addressed or symptoms start to dissipate greatly. But, the main question that we're asking and the thing that we are addressing is, all right, where are your muscles not working well? And that's what we're doing with MAT. But the other thing that you can also start to add in addition to muscle activation techniques, is some consistent and controlled resistance training for your trunk, for your hips, for your feet, and really just for your body overall. But kind of like we were saying earlier, once you get your muscles working well, you can start to get them stronger. You can start to get them really functioning super, super highly by adding in some controlled, focused, very specific and strategic resistance training in order to make sure that not only are the muscles working well to begin with, but that they stay working well, and that they are able to function as well as they can and support the discs and the other structures of your body as well as they can.
Absolutely, Charlie. So resistance training does play a big role. And I hope that through this podcast, you were able to take that little piece of advice that you probably read on WebMD somewhere, or, you heard from a friend that, exercise could help. But we want you to really see that exercise absolutely helps, and getting your muscles working and functioning better with MAT absolutely helps. because I feel like the statement that exercise could help or the muscles could help seems very nonchalant and seems very, yeah, that'll probably be the last thing I try because it doesn't seem very like potent. That getting your muscle system working better is probably the most potent thing, most conservative thing. And in my opinion and in my experience, could be maybe the one thing that you have to do to help with your spine, help with stability of your spine, help manage your disc issues. So I hope that you got that from this podcast. That was our mission in sharing this, that there is such a potent piece that the muscle system can do for you. So if you're looking for an MAT specialist, make sure you go on muscleactivation.com and search your area for a specialist. You can also just reach out to us. The MAT community is pretty tight. We kind of know most people, so we can definitely refer you if you are looking for someone in your area. If you're in our area, we would love to see you. MAT is a technique that you do have to do with a specialist, so it's not an at-home try this by yourself kind of thing. It is very intricate and detailed, which is why it is so potent and powerful. So we really encourage you to check it out, whether you're coming to see us or one of our colleagues across the globe.
Absolutely. So remember, 80% of people over the age of 30 have some kind of structural disc issue, but half the people that have a structural disc issue don't have any signs and symptoms of a disc issue whatsoever, which means the symptoms that the other half are experiencing may not be solely related to the discs themselves. And the muscle system and how well the muscles contract is something that's not going to show up on imaging. But when the muscles are working well, up to 50% of the pressure in certain discs can start to be reduced, which means the stress that those discs are taking on starts to get reduced. And we see that time and time again, when people that have diagnosed disc issues get their muscles working better, their body starts to feel better, starts to function better, and they start to be able to have a higher quality of life overall because their body is better supported. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that may be experiencing disc issues or wants to be proactive about making sure their discs stay healthy? Share this episode with them so they can learn about the importance of the muscular system in maintaining and promoting the health of their discs. And while you're online, if you wouldn't mind, head on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. It helps other people find us who are looking for information on exercise, who are looking for information on health, and it helps us show up higher in those search results. So if you found value in this conversation today, please take a few minutes, let us know by leaving us that rating and review. Thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.